Mother said she was a time traveler who came to save father, but her cheat ability was nothing more than brute strength, so she worked as a butcher in the village and carried coffins for wealthy families. With the points she earned from the system, she exchanged them for father's scholarly title. But when father became the Grand Chancellor, he had a child with my widowed aunt. He said, "It's not easy for aunt to be a widow," and he wanted to inherit both family lines, making aunt and mother equal wives. That day, mother took off her jacket still stained with pig's blood, and silently looked at father for a long time. Father slowly lowered his head, but in the end, he did not change his mind. Late that night, mother held me as we slept. I heard her whispering to the hulking figure in the air, "System, I want to go home." I suddenly opened my eyes, gripping the hem of mother's clothes tightly. "Mother, where are you going? Can you take Changla with you?" Mother held me tightly in her arms and looked up at the giant figure in the sky. "I'll use all my points to exchange for my daughter to come with me." The giant figure asked her, "If all the points are cleared, the male lead will lose everything he gained. Shouldn't we leave him at least some initial points?" Mother shook her head. "No, he doesn't deserve it." When father brought aunt into the mansion, I was accompanying my mother on our way back from the butcher's shop at the slaughterhouse. My mother had been working alongside a group of burly men, slaughtering pigs and sheep. Then, at Butcher Wu's meat shop, she helped with cutting and selling the meat. It wasn't until evening that she finally took the full tale of silver she had earned and left with me. Butcher Wu saw us out, rubbing his hands together and stealing shy glances at my mother. "Such a capable woman. What lucky man will have the fortune to marry you in the future?" My mother, always straightforward and good-humored, could take a joke. Hearing this, he halted his steps. She looked at Butcher Wu with a serious and dissatisfied expression, saying, "I have a husband. My husband is the best man in this capital city. This is our daughter, can't you see?" As she spoke, she tightened her grip on my hand. I immediately raised my head as well. Just like mother, I glared angrily at the man with the fat face and big ears. Butcher Wu flushed red in an instant. I saw you always alone with a child, and thought your husband." Mother ignored him, took my hand, and turned to leave. We walked through the long street market, heading toward the Prime Minister's residence. Mother earned more than usual today, yet she was unhappy and remained silent the whole time. As we passed by the street stalls, a vendor called out to her, "Madam, buy a sachet for your family. It brings peace and safety." Mother didn't believe in such things, but the vendor added, "You can also have words embroidered on the sachet." Mother still paused in her steps. The sachets were sold at a high price, inlaid with jade, costing a full half-tael of silver. But mother gritted her teeth and bought one anyway, having her name embroidered on the spot. As she walked back home, a smile appeared on her face. She smiled with her eyes curved and said to me, "I'll have your father put it on as soon as we get back." Father is now the Grand Chancellor, but he has never taken her to meet outsiders. So, in this entire capital city, no one knew that she, a butcher who slaughtered pigs, was the wife of the Prime Minister. Mother hoped that others would at least know her name. The moonlight in the street market flowed like water. Mother laughed, and I laughed along with her. I was overjoyed, waiting to go home and see father wearing the sachet. Father was exceptionally handsome, tall and dashing. Mother said he looked good in anything he wore, but when we hurried to the outside of the Prime Minister's residence, yet what caught my eye was a golden silk sedan chair, halted just outside the mansion gate. Father, still in his official robes, hurriedly stepped out of the sedan. He then turned back, carefully lifting the sedan curtain. A broad, sturdy hand reached inside, and a slender, pale hand from within gently rested upon his arm. The shy and timid young woman, leaning on his arm, stepped down from the sedan chair. Along with her, a little girl of about 3 years old was also led down. The night was somewhat dim. I watched for a long while before finally recognizing them. That was over a year ago, the aunt who had been driven out of the estate by mother, along with her child. Father supported the aunt with one hand and held the child's hand with the other, leading them into the estate. Mother took my hand and suddenly tightened her grip, squeezing it until it hurt. I let out a low cry, and only then did she snap back to reality, immediately releasing her hold. Even the sachet that cost half a tael of silver in my hand fell to the ground. I tilted my head and saw her face, which had turned somewhat ashen. She stared fixedly at father and aunt. Suddenly, she pulled open the cloth bag slung at her waist. She pulled out the butcher knife she always carried with her whenever she went to the slaughterhouse. Without another word, she charged toward the person about to step through the mansion gate, fierce and imposing. She roared just as she would in the slaughterhouse. "Let's see who dares let her in today." Father instantly halted his steps. He turned around, looking at mother who was gripping a butcher knife and charging toward him in a rage, his handsome brows furrowed, and a look of disgust surfaced in his dark eyes. He quickly reached out, shielding aunt and her child, Fu Yanga, as if my mother would really go mad and stab them. Auntie's mind hasn't been right since uncle passed away. She saw my mother holding a knife, with bloodstains on her coarse cloth jacket. Her face was filled with terror as she sobbed quietly, clutching Fu Yanga. She kept shrinking back into my father's embrace. Fu Yanga clung tightly to my father's waist, crying out urgently, "Father, father, quickly drive this madwoman away." My mother grew even angrier. Her hand holding the knife trembled as she raised it, pointing the blade at her aunt and Fu Yanga. Get out of here." Fu Yanga still clung tightly to my father, while her aunt cowered in his arms. Mother then turned the blade toward father. "Fu Rongsha, make them get out. Either I end things with Changle and you right now. When mother gets angry, I get angry too. I imitate how mother did it before, with hands on hips." I stomped over with a stern, puffed-up face. Then, remembering something, I turned back to pick up the sachet from the ground and quietly tucked it into my sleeve. That cost a whole half-tael of silver. Mother would have to slaughter so many pigs and sheep just to earn that much. I rushed over again, standing by mother's side to back her up. I widened my eyes, glaring at aunt and Fu Yanga as I said, "Didn't you hear my mother tell you to get lost?" Fu Yanga's lips trembled, her eyes brimming with grievance as tears fell even harder. Father often said she was fair and delicate, looking just like a young lady from a wealthy family, not like me, dusty and disheveled, like a little beggar on the street. But I looked down on Fu Yanga the most, when I was her age. I've long been able to help my mother guard the butcher shop, and I've long since stopped crying. Impatiently, I took another step closer to them, puffing out my chest and declaring, "What's there to cry about? Hurry up and go with your mother." Before I could finish, my father angrily cut me off. "Enough, Shentang, look at yourself, and then look at the fine daughter you've raised. Where is there even a trace of the dignity befitting the wife and daughter of a prime minister's household?" His eyes were filled with disappointment and shame. It seems that my mother and I are the greatest shame to him, the lofty and powerful prime minister. My mother clenched the knife, looked at him, and laughed bitterly. "Prime Minister, Fu Rongsha, if it weren't for me, you'd still be a woodcutter in the mountain valley. Don't even talk about becoming a prime minister. You're not even fit to be a scholar." Father, now a high-ranking official, is constantly flattered and praised, and he can't stand being looked down upon. His face quickly flushed and paled alternately, his voice filled with fury. "I've achieved what I have today through my own knowledge and abilities. Do you truly possess such great capabilities? Why not support that butcher Wu, who's been making eyes at you, to become a prime minister as well?" Mother looked at him in astonishment. After a long pause, she seemed to understand something. "You're following me." Father's phoenix eyes held a scrutinizing gaze as he sneered repeatedly. "If you're upright in your actions, why fear being followed?" Mother looked at him. As I watched, I suddenly laughed again. "Then I'll try another day. Have Butcher Wu go study." Father's face turned completely dark. Without any further hesitation, he directly had the house steward lead aunt and Fu Yanga inside. When he looked at his mother again, only coldness remained in his eyes. "Shentang, let me be straight with you. Fu Yanga, she is my flesh and blood. I plan to marry Jiao Jiao into the family, to properly take care of her on behalf of my late brother. From now on, she will be your equal wife." Mother's face, flushed with anger, froze instantly upon hearing those words. For a long time, she neither moved nor spoke. She just stared at father, motionless, as if suddenly unable to comprehend what had just happened. Under her gaze, father's eyes began to wander. He seemed to grow somewhat uneasy, lowering his gaze. then he glanced sideways, looking elsewhere, his eyes drifting about, his broad hand hanging at his side, the knuckles curled stiffly. A wind rose in the street at night, silently sweeping up the withered yellow leaves of the locust trees from the ground. I couldn't quite understand what they were saying. I felt a bit cold, and because of Mother's unusual silence, I grew uneasy. I leaned into Mother's embrace and held her tight. It took a long time before Mother finally raised her hand and patted my head. I could feel it, the hand resting on my head was trembling. I raised my head. I watched as she slowly, very slowly, nodded and said, "Good, very good." Father seemed to have said something very harsh, yet the anger on Mother's face actually faded, replaced by an unusually calm expression. I used to sneak off to the tea house to listen to storytelling. The storyteller would recount those deeply moving love stories, sighing as he said, "The young lady's heart is dead, so she neither cries nor makes a fuss." I think, at this moment, Mother is just like what the storyteller said. Mother slowly placed the butcher knife in her hand back into the cloth bag. Then, holding my hand, she walked past Father, walking inside. Not another word was spoken. Father, who had never been one to speak up on his own, suddenly seemed to carry a hint of urgency in his voice as he called out from behind us. At that time, Rong Jing had just left. Zhao Zhao's mind was troubled, and I had drunk too much. It was an accident. Mother abruptly turned to look at him, her emotions spiraling out of control, eyes wide with fury. Enough, her eyes bloodshot. She could no longer maintain her composure, grabbing a butcher knife and lunging forward. "You betrayed me. Who wants to hear your excuses? If you truly feel ashamed, then go die." For a moment, I was overwhelmed with terror, yet instinctively, I did not want to stop Mother. I simply stood frozen in place, clenching my hands tightly. The knife, sharp enough to slice through flesh like mud, swung toward him. But Father did not dodge. The blade slashed a long, ghastly wound across Father's arm, and blood instantly gushed out in a torrent. Father's eyes turned red with fury, yet he remained motionless throughout. Granny Zheng from the household and a group of maidservants rushed over, screaming to intervene. "How could you, madam, strike with such cruelty? How could you be so cruel?" Yet I knew full well that Mother had not been cruel at all. When she was at the slaughterhouse, with a single stroke of this butcher's knife, she could easily sever a plump pig's leg. She still couldn't bear to do it. That's why Father only ended up with this one wound on his hand. Everyone in the household rushed over, distressed by Father's injury, scolding Mother for having lost her mind. Only I, trembling, ran over and hugged the hand Mother held the knife with, worriedly asking her, "Mother, does your hand hurt?" I saw her hand gripping the knife, her fingers turning white. Mother was like a brave and fearless warrior. She fought fiercely with Aunt and Fu Yanger. And then with Father, head held high, not even a hint of redness in her eyes. Yet she lowered her gaze, looking at me and asking if her hand hurt. But then she suddenly cried, a single tear falling onto the back of my hand. She quickly turned her back to Father, hurriedly wiping away the tears. He had reverted back to that cold-faced warrior. I watched her cry, and felt an overwhelming sadness myself. It was as if her sorrow had funneled straight into my heart. I began to weep softly. Mother picked me up, ignoring the noisy crowd who were all worried about Father, and carried me back to our bedroom. Late at night, I leaned against her chest, half asleep, and heard her speaking. I opened my eyes and saw the big fellow floating in midair, the one I hadn't seen in a long time. Mother spoke to the big fellow, her voice soft and lonely. "System, I've made up my mind. I want to go home." A strong premonition washed over me. Mother was about to leave me. Panic-stricken, I opened my eyes. No longer able to pretend I was asleep, I reached out and desperately grabbed the hem of Mother's clothes. It seems that as long as I do this, she won't be able to leave me. I trembled with fear. "Where is Mother going? Can you take Changla with you? Changla will be good and listen to everything Mother says." The more I spoke, the more I wanted to cry, and the more I spoke, the more afraid I became. I always felt that in the next moment, she would vanish without a trace. Father said I looked like a little beggar. Now he has brought in Auntie, and even says that Fu Yanger is his child. Mother is gone. No one will ever love me again. I clung tightly to Mother, sobbing uncontrollably. Mother gazed out at the night beyond the window. After a long while, she let out a soft sigh. Changle, Mother is going back to another world. There will no longer be father. There will be no Dajwang to play with you. There will be no Prime Minister's residence, nor your favorite 4 happiness meatballs. Dajwang was a little beggar that Butcher Wu picked up by the roadside. He raised him as his own son. I often went to the slaughterhouse or the butcher shop with my mother. Dajwang always loved playing with me the most, and the 4 happiness meatballs made by Butcher Wu with fresh meat are the most delicious in the entire capital. I'm a bit reluctant to part with Dajwang, and also a bit reluctant to part with the 4 happiness meatballs, and it seems there's also a tiny bit of reluctance to part with father, but I only hesitated for an extremely brief moment before making up my mind. I held mother tightly and said, I only want mother. Even if mother takes Changle and we really become little beggars, as long as mother is here, Changle will be happy. Mother's face was tinged with sorrow, yet she couldn't help but laugh at my antics. She held me tightly, gently stroking my hair. After a long while, she finally sighed and said to the burly man, I want to use all my points to take my daughter with me. The large figure in the sky flickered a few times, and that strange voice sounded again. Host, if all the points are cleared, everything the male lead has gained will also be lost. Won't you consider leaving 100 initial points? That way, it would be enough for you to take your daughter away. Mother looked out into the pitch-black night. After a long while, she covered my ears and softly gave her answer. But I was close enough to faintly make out her words. She said, we won't keep it. He doesn't deserve it. She was probably afraid that if I heard it, I would be heartbroken. But I wouldn't be heartbroken at all. It was father himself who once said we should be like the world mother once lived in, where mother and he would be loyal only to each other, one man and one woman for a lifetime. But now, he wants to marry my aunt, and they even have a child together. Mother left father because father made a mistake, so I'm not sad. Yet, as I lean into mother's embrace, my eyes still feel a little sore. I quietly blink, swallowing back the sting. The candle flame was extinguished. In my drowsy state, I heard my mother softly murmuring, Changle, oh Changle, why is it that people's hearts are always so prone to change? He once said he would go through fire and water for me. Now, the mountain of knives hasn't come, and the sea of fire hasn't arrived yet. I nuzzled in mother's arms and mumbled in reply, Changle's heart will never change. Changle will always love mother the most. Mother chuckled softly above my head. Silly child, I'm not silly at all, I know so many things. Father has become a high-ranking official now, yet mother still refuses to live a life of leisure. She insists on continuing to work as a butcher, carry coffins, and earn money in ways that are considered improper. Mother isn't just making things hard for herself, it's the only way she can trade with the big guy, so that father can continue to live well. She says this is a mission. Over the years, I've overheard her many times, whispering to the big guy at night, my father, who had never even passed the lowest level of the imperial exams, was deeply frustrated and worked as a woodcutter in a small village. A day of hard work cutting a load of firewood earned him only 10 copper coins. It took 100 loads of firewood to exchange for 1 tael of silver, and to travel to the capital for the imperial exams, he would need at least several dozen taels of silver for the journey. Mother was sent to him by the big guy when he was at his lowest. She found father in the mountains, saying she had lost her way. Father then gave her the steamed bun he had kept tucked in his chest all day, the one he couldn't bear to eat. Mother said she was an orphan, with no home to return to. Father was also an orphan, with only a sickly younger brother. He was so poor he could barely make ends meet, yet he still took mother in. Later, mother carried firewood for him. She easily hoisted a load of firewood onto one shoulder and walked down the mountain with light, swift steps. Father was left utterly dumbfounded, unable to snap out of it for a long while. Later on, mother's immense strength became famous throughout the surrounding villages. Unfazed by ridicule, she joined a group of men in slaughtering pigs, butchering sheep, and carrying coffins. The money she earned wasn't considered respectable, but it far surpassed what father made from chopping firewood. Father had time to study during the day and money to buy candles at night. After months of diligent study, he finally passed the counter-level examination and became a scholar. He secured a job copying documents for the county magistrate's household. After copying for over a month, he earned 1 tael of silver. On the way back home, he made a stop at a jewelry shop. He spent every last bit of his 1 tael of silver to buy a white jade hairpin for his mother. It was the first piece of jewelry he had ever given her. When he handed it over, the tips of his ears were flushed red, and his voice was filled with guilt. "Ah Tang, I have no talent. This hairpin is not worthy of you. If one day I manage to make something of myself, I will surely give you the finest and most expensive hairpin in the capital." Mother laughed at his foolishness, her eyes welling up with tears. Some girls and women in the village said that father had been cheated by the jewelry shop, that hairpin clearly wasn't worth a tael of silver. Others remarked that the color was a bit too old-fashioned and didn't suit mother. Only mother smiled so brightly her eyes crinkled, wearing the hairpin wherever she went. She refuted their words, one by one. "This hairpin is simply the finest. Anything Rongsha picks is simply the finest." Later, mother used the work she had done to exchange, bit by bit with the big fellow, for father's appearance and future prospects. When father was a woodcutter, he once fell down the mountainside, his face cut by branches and rocks. Almost half of his face was disfigured. After mother made a deal with the big fellow, the scars on father's face gradually and miraculously faded away. He continued his studies, took the exams, and once again passed the imperial examination. Becoming a provincial scholar, he went to the capital again to take the imperial examination, passed with flying colors, and became a high-ranking official. He fulfilled his initial promise, sending mother many hairpins and jewelry that were even better and more expensive. Yet the one mother wore most often was still that white jade hairpin. She said it was father's original intention. It was also the reason why she chose to stay even after completing the big guy's mission, she said. Father was worth it. Mother did not misjudge the man. It was that father had walked too far ahead and, in the end, lost his original intention. I lay in bed. By the faint moonlight, I saw the white jade hairpin in mother's hair that she had forgotten to take out again. The hairpin had long been old and worn, yet after all these years, she still couldn't bear to part with it. I quietly reached out and carefully removed the hairpin, then hid it under the pillow again. Otherwise, when she looks in the mirror tomorrow morning and sees it, she'll be heartbroken again. Mother has settled things with the big guy. After the new year, on the Lantern Festival, he'll take me away. That night, she slept very peacefully. The next day, when we were having breakfast, Aunt and Fu Yanga were there too. Auntie took my mother's place, sitting right next to father. My favorite 4 happiness meatballs were placed right in front of Fu Yanga, just as mother and I stepped into the front hall. We saw Auntie foolishly clinging to father's arm, chattering away, "Husband, I want to eat fish." Mother furrowed her brows. In the past, it was because of this that she had driven Aunt and her child to live outside. But this time, she was not angry, nor did she scold or drive Aunt away again. Father looked at us as we entered, a flicker of panic crossing his eyes as he quickly withdrew his hand. He opened his mouth, as if wanting to explain something. He had said it many times before. Auntie's mind isn't right, Auntie isn't clear-headed. Auntie mistook him for uncle, and Fu Yanga, she was still young, calling him father out of childish ignorance. In any case, none of them meant any harm. But before father could finish speaking, mother had already turned her gaze toward me and said, "Changle, are you hungry?" "I'm a bit hungry." But mother said, "If you eat with someone you don't like, even the most delicious food will taste bland." So, I looked at that plate of 4 happiness meatballs and secretly swallowed my saliva. "But I'm not hungry, I don't want to eat," Changla insisted firmly. Mother then tightened her grip on my hand, casting a cold glance at father as she said, "I came to tell you something. Changla and I have packed our things. From now on, we'll be living elsewhere." Father's face instantly turned cold as he threw down his chopsticks and said, "Why must you make such a fuss?" Jiao Jiao and Yanga were living alone in the house outside. They were harassed by street thugs yesterday. So I brought them over. If you're unhappy about me marrying her, you can just say so outright. No need to be like this. Mother's eyes held nothing but disgust as she impatiently cut off father's words. Why should I be unhappy? The Grand Chancellor having 3 wives and 4 concubines is only natural. Must Chang-Le and I stay here, just to drink your wedding toast? Father's face flushed red with anger. He could never win an argument with mother. After opening and closing his mouth several times, he finally managed to say, Where would you even go if you moved out? Mother said coldly, the butcher Wu has helped me find a house, so there's no need for you to trouble yourself. She took my hand and turned to leave. Behind us, father's face was left ashen with anger. He sneered repeatedly, Fine. I will marry Jiao Jiao on the Lantern Festival after the new year. Don't you dare come and cause trouble then. I wanted to say, what a coincidence. The day mother and I were to leave was also the Lantern Festival. But I was afraid mother would be unhappy, so I still didn't speak up, this time. Mother didn't reply to father with a single word. She took me, went back to the bedroom to get our bundles, and strode out of the Prime Minister's residence. Father threw down his bowl and chopsticks and chased after us, catching up just outside the bronze gate. As mother and I descended the steps, he spoke with a mix of awkwardness and urgency. Shen Tang, don't you dare regret this. Are you really going to look for someone else? Mother no longer paid him any mind. She took me and walked straight away, heading toward the distant end of the street. She didn't look back, so I didn't look back either. I thought to myself. Now that father has become the Grand Chancellor, he's become unreasonable. It was clearly he who sought out the aunt, yet he claims that mother is the one looking for someone else. Mother never looked for anyone else. The matter of her wanting to move out with me, Butcher Wu had no idea about it at all. Mother took me and found an inn to leave our bundles. Then we still went to Butcher Wu's slaughterhouse. She said that before leaving, she wanted to do some more work to earn some silver. To buy some porcelain and paintings that could be taken to the other world. They would sell for a lot of money then, and it would also help me live a good life. She said, these ordinary things, in that world, they become quite valuable, called antiques. As soon as we arrived at the slaughterhouse, we saw the dark-faced Da Zhuang. Today, he wasn't in a hurry to help hold down pigs or catch sheep. Instead, he stood at the main gate, gazing into the distance. He held a box of pastries in his hands. Opening the lid to take a look, he seemed to swallow his saliva, then carefully closed the box again. Every time I saw him, I felt happy. I called out to him, and when he looked up and saw me, he was overjoyed. He ran over in a few steps, handing the box to me and saying, Here, I was just about to give this to you. Last night, when I went with Dad to deliver the meat, an official steward gave it to me. It's cloud slice cake. It looks so fragrant and soft, absolutely delicious. I asked him, Have you tried it? Da Zhuang's face flushed red. I'm a boy. I don't like eating these things at all. Take it, just hold on to it. He shoved the box into my arms. His face flushed as he went to catch the sheep. By evening, after all the work was done, Butcher Wu kept the freshest and most tender piece of pork leg and made a large pot of 4 happiness meatballs. He insisted on keeping mother and me for dinner. Mother felt bad about it, but seeing how I was practically drooling, she still nodded. Big Zhuang and I were overjoyed. During the meal, Big Zhuang kept putting meatballs into my bowl. I ate many of them, so many that I started hiccuping. Butcher Wu grinned and poured me some water. The sky gradually darkened, and the bright moonlight shone in through the window. Suddenly, I remembered that my father used to be a good cook too. His 4 happiness meatballs were also quite delicious, almost as good as Butcher Wu's. He would also watch me eat with a silly smile, pouring water for me and patting my back to help me burp. When he looked at mother, he was just like Butcher Wu, always with that silly smile, his face flushed red, wanting to look, yet always stealing only a quick glance before swiftly turning their eyes away. He would feel heartache for his mother's hardships, so much so that while reading at night, he would quietly shed tears. At that time, I leaned over the desk watching him, thinking he was just like a child. Later, when father went to the capital to become an official, the household gained many cooks and servants, both big and small. Father never cooked in the kitchen again, nor did he ever stare at mother and me with that simple, foolish smile. If I burped after a meal, he would scold me for being rude and improper. Mother went out to slaughter pigs, butcher sheep, and carry coffins. He said mother was making a show of suffering when there was no need, inviting ridicule. He wore his official uniform, looking exceptionally handsome and full of pride. But I only felt that, after father became a high-ranking official, he no longer seemed like father. Mother still couldn't hold back and said to Butcher Wu, Brother Wu, after the new year passes, on the Lantern Festival, I'll be taking Chang'e away with me, I won't be coming back after that. The bowl in Butcher Wu's hand suddenly fell to the ground. Dazhuang still had half a meatball stuffed in his mouth, and it took him a long moment to snap out of his shock. He reached out and tightly grasped my hand, so anxious that tears even began to fall. I don't want Chang'e to leave. Butcher Wu hung his head, his eyes red, and for a long time, he couldn't utter a word. When Mother and I were about to leave, he suddenly stood up, rummaged under the cabinet, pulled out a money pouch, and stuffed it into my mother's hands. There are over 30 taels of silver in here, along with some copper coins. You, take it, use it if you run into any difficulties. His face flushed red, filled with sorrow yet at a loss for what to do. Not much, no need to pay it back. This must be all he had. He didn't even keep a single copper coin for himself. Mother's eyes reddened. I can't take this, Brother Wu, I'm not short on money. Butcher Wu grew flustered and anxious in the moment. He reached out directly and grabbed my mother's wrist, forcing the money pouch into her hand. Take it, I'm happy to give it to you. Before he could finish his words, the wooden door was violently slammed open. Father stood outside the door with several guards, his face ashen like a ghostly judge from the underworld. He looked over, his gaze slowly lowered. Like a knife, it fell on Butcher Wu's hand, which was gripping my mother's wrist. Mother was startled by the door that had suddenly been pushed open. Seeing her father outside the door, her face instantly turned cold. She offered no explanation, only stared indifferently at the person outside. The anger in her father's eyes grew even deeper. Butcher Wu did not recognize her father. He usually had a bad temper, but commoners were only afraid of officials. He glanced at his father and the guard's attire, utterly confused, and spoke in a gentle tone, Sir, have you come to the wrong place? His father gave him a disdainful glance. Then, looking at the meat crumbs still lingering at the corner of my mouth, his voice turned cold as he said, You said you weren't hungry for the meatballs made at home, but here you're eating with such delight. You really do listen to your mother. If your mother wants to find you a new father now, would you immediately call him Daddy too? He became an official and spoke less, disdaining to say much about anything. Yet now, in one breath, he said so much, but I could also tell that what he said was not kind. I was so angry I wanted to retort. Mother had already taken several steps forward, raising her hand to slap father across the face. She shouted angrily, Fu Rongsha, you've gone too far with your words. Even during their fiercest arguments, father had always refused to retaliate, but today, he raised his hand and tightly gripped mother's wrist, the veins on the back of his hand bulging. His face was tense as he barked an order to the guards behind him. Whichever hand this butcher used to touch the Chancellor's wife, cut it off. Several guards rushed forward and pinned Butcher Wu to the ground. Butcher Wu was stronger than my mother, but he was outnumbered. His face flushed red as he struggled, and at last he understood something. The look of awe on his face faded, replaced by disgust and contempt. Pinned to the ground and unable to rise, he still faced his father's direction and spat fiercely. Pa, some prime minister you are. My own wife has suffered so much hardship outside, and now she's being forced to leave with the child. Coward, I'm not afraid of you. If you want to cut it off, then cut it off, it's just an arm. Father's eyes blazed with surging fury. Bold, then why are you just standing there? Get to it. Da Zhuang was so frightened that his face turned pale. He rushed forward to stop the guards, only to be shoved to the ground by them. His head hit the wall, and blood began to flow. I had never seen my father in such a state before. The man who once read by the dim candlelight and shed tears for his mother was nothing like the monster before me now. I lunged forward, desperately clinging to the arm of the guard who was about to swing his sword down. I rushed to speak. It seemed I wanted to curse, yet it also felt as though I wanted to beg, but I couldn't utter a single word. Outside the window, the bright moonlight quietly slipped behind the clouds, leaving only an endless, pitch-black, eerie night. I felt an overwhelming fear and anger, along with countless other indescribable emotions. amidst that strange jumble of feelings, for the first time, I clearly realized that the father I once knew was truly gone. The person before me, wearing the same skin as my father, had turned into a demon. A guard pinned down one of Butcher Wu's arms. Another guard easily pushed me aside and raised his sword. Dazhuang desperately scrambled to his feet and lunged forward again, crying out in terror. Father's voice grew extremely impatient as he abruptly drew his sword. "Stop dawdling, I'll do it." Amidst the chaotic and heart-pounding clamor, I suddenly heard a distinct, abrupt thud. I turned around and saw Mother kneeling before Father. Mother had never knelt before anyone, even in the hardest and most difficult times of the past. When the local gentry and bullies, seeing Father as a weak scholar, deliberately came to bully him, they forced Mother to kneel and kowtow, but she never did. When the house was smashed into a mess, Father held Mother tightly and said, "Atang, from now on, I will make sure you live a good life, in this lifetime. I will never let anyone force you to kneel before anyone." And now, for the first time, Mother was forced to kneel. Kneeling before Father, the anger on her face vanished, leaving only a wooden numbness, like a carved wooden doll in the marketplace. The sword in Father's hand fell to the ground. Panic flickered in his eyes for a moment, and even his hands began to tremble. Perhaps at this moment, he suddenly remembered his own promise from the past. Mother raised her eyes to look at him. Her voice grew very calm, so calm it felt hollow. "There's really nothing between him and me. Let him go, and I'll go back with you." Father fell silent, unable to speak. He looked at Mother, his hand hanging by his side slowly clenched into a fist, his eyes gradually turning bloodshot. After a long while, he suddenly picked up Mother in his arms. His face was tense and trembling as he turned and strode out. Without a word, he mounted his horse, holding Mother tightly in his arms, and galloped away. The last time he had ridden a horse with Mother through the long street, it was many years ago, on the day we first entered the capital. At that time, he was at the height of his glory, believing that having Mother by his side was the proudest thing he could do. I sat with my grandmother in the soft sedan chair, lifting the curtain to watch Father and Mother on horseback. The capital was brimming with the vitality of spring, yet it could not compare to the radiance in Father's eyes. Even someone as bold and straightforward as Mother actually blushed. Later, Mother met the wives of other high-ranking officials, each as precious as pearls and jade. Afraid of embarrassing Father, she no longer wanted to stroll down the long streets with him. After that, Father gradually began to say that the work she did was not respectable. Speaking of the aunt who lost her husband, though her mind has grown feeble, she remains gentle and obedient. They began to quarrel. No one in the entire capital remembers anymore. When the current prime minister first arrived in the capital, he used to keep his wife by his side. I pulled my thoughts back and was escorted home by the guards. Father took Mother back to their bedroom, closed the door, and wouldn't let me in. I was taken by my nanny to sleep in another room. Late at night, however, I heard a violent commotion. Mother-in-law got up and hurried out, and I immediately followed her. I saw the door to Mother's bedroom open, and Father stumbled out from inside. There was a long scar on his left cheek. Blood welled up, then slowly trickled down his cold, pale neck. I stood beyond the wide-open door. I saw Mother collapsed on the floor, her eyes bloodshot, her entire body trembling uncontrollably. In her hand, she clutched a hairpin, its tip stained with blood. Father looked utterly lost, turning back to face the person inside. His voice was filled with pain and confusion. "Atang, why, you used to love me." Mother's crimson eyes stared fixedly at him. He had just turned to look back. Mother's hairpin was already raised, pressed fiercely against her own neck. Father laughed bitterly, and as he laughed, a single tear fell. This was the first time I had ever seen Father cry. He looked disheveled and finally left the courtyard. I rushed inside in a hurry, running so fast that I didn't even stop to pick up the shoe I dropped. I ran to Mother's side and carefully embraced her, saying, "Mother, please put down the hairpin, you might get hurt." Mother slowly lowered her gaze, staring at me in a daze. Her hand loosened, and the hairpin fell to the ground. She held me tightly, as if trying to press me into her very being. "Did Mother frighten Changle? Did I frighten Changle? Good girl. Mother is fine. Mother is fine." I leaned into her embrace, Quietly holding back my tears, I said earnestly, "Changle is not afraid, as long as mother is fine." Mother became less talkative. Once she would have angrily scolded her aunt for pretending to be mad and foolish, and reprimanded Fu Yanga for being just like her mother at such a young age. She would have fought back without backing down, arguing fiercely with her father. But now, she no longer cares to say anything, she only counts the days, saying she will take me back. Perhaps it started from that night when father nearly chopped off Butcher Wu's hand. Mother suddenly began to understand that father was now the prime minister, he was no longer the man he used to be, so, she stopped arguing with him. Father still came many times, wanting to enter mother's bedroom. Mother watched him coldly, and he left. In the blink of an eye, the new year passed, and it was the eve of the Lantern Festival. The prime minister's residence was already filled with joy, having prepared for father and aunt's grand wedding. Auntie had no family of her own. Father prepared the most generous betrothal gifts for her. He also arranged the most splendid dowry for her, enough to create a grand procession of red that would stir the entire capital. What he had once promised to mother, he now fulfilled for auntie. Mother packed our bags overnight, telling me we would leave at first light. She said we would bring porcelain and calligraphy to another world. She had already asked her mother-in-law to buy them, carefully packing everything into our bags. She was so happy and expectant, not a trace of reluctance left in her eyes. She held me close, unusually chattering on and saying many things to me. Mother has no family in that world either, but bringing so many things back, it should be enough to exchange for a lot of money. And I definitely won't let Changle suffer any grievances. There are many good things there that Changle has never seen before, and mother will take you to see them all. I leaned against her, filled with longing, but then father barged into the courtyard again. This time, mother looked at him coldly, and he refused to leave. He seemed to have been drinking, his face somewhat clouded with intoxication. He stumbled a bit as he climbed the steps, arriving at the doorway of the room I shared with mother. His expression was dazed, and he stared intently at mother for a long while. Then, he suddenly spoke, "Atang, if I were to make up for the wedding tomorrow, would you?" Mother seemed to have heard something terrifying. Urgently cutting him off, "I don't want to." Father's face froze, his eyes filled only with desolation. His eyes turned red, though it was unclear whether it was from drinking too much wine or something else. After a long while, he nodded, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth as he said, all right. I was just joking with you. Jiao Jiao is almost ready to put on her wedding dress." He turned and walked out of the courtyard. In the middle of the courtyard, I turned back to look at mother. "Shentang, don't make a fuss tomorrow." Mother had already stood up and closed the bedroom door. She said nothing more, taking me to bed as if nothing had happened. The next day, the wedding procession from the Prime Minister's residence was ready to depart before dawn. As mother and I stepped out of the courtyard, I saw father in the distance, dressed in a bright red wedding robe, his tall figure standing out. He strode out of the residence and headed toward the tall horse waiting outside. I couldn't help but take a look, but mother didn't glance back even once. The mansion was in a state of frantic activity. Amid the chaos, she took me by the hand and led me out through a side gate, heading toward another world. Mother said we needed to find a secluded spot in the outskirts. Only then could I summon the system and open the passage back to the other world. Otherwise, if someone saw, it would frighten them. Mother did the rough work of slaughtering pigs, butchering sheep, and carrying coffins, yet her heart was the kindest of all. As we passed through the long street, we saw from afar father's wedding procession of carriages and horses. Father sat high on his horse, like a great general setting off to war. Looking most imposing, behind him stretched a long procession of carriages and horses, laden with betrothal gifts as high as mountains. The entire capital was stirred, with streets emptied as people flocked to see. Every street and alley was crowded with onlookers. Envious voices filled the air, all saying the Prime Minister's new wife was blessed with the greatest fortune. A crowd surged past us, nearly knocking me over. Mother immediately reached out to shield me. The grand red carriage and horses were about to vanish at the far end of the long street. This time, mother followed the direction of the crowd and glanced over there from afar, but after just one look, she withdrew her gaze. I thought it must be the strong winter wind. The wind must have blown into mother's eyes, for it seemed as if they reddened for a moment. I recall many years ago, at night, my mother held me in her arms and spoke with my father about their simple wedding. Life was hard back then. And they were both orphans without parents. There was almost no betrothal gift, no dowry. Father killed the only chicken in the house. Mother, having just finished her work at the slaughterhouse, gritted her teeth and bought a piece of meat. They invited the neighbors over for a meal, and that was considered their wedding, that night. When mother spoke of those times, father's eyes reddened with guilt and he said, "Ah Tang, one day I will surely make up for you with a grand wedding. It must be a procession of 10 miles of red dowry, with the streets emptied by the crowds." Father made many promises. He was a man of great learning, with the best memory, yet it seems I have forgotten only the words I said to mother. The carriage swiftly disappeared at the end of the long street. Mother held my hand tightly as we continued on our way to the outskirts. Along the way, we stopped to see Butcher Wu and Da Zhuang. Mother used all the newly accumulated points to exchange for 2-piece talismans. She gave them to Butcher Wu and Da Zhuang. She said the peace talismans couldn't bring them immense wealth, but as long as they kept them, they would never suffer from serious illnesses or disasters. When we left, Butcher Wu's shoulders were trembling. Such a rugged man was nearly brought to tears, but Da Zhuang had stopped crying. He looked at me earnestly and said, "No matter how far you go, Father and I will definitely find you. I want to say, our Niang and I are going to another world. No matter what, they won't be able to find us anymore." But I still couldn't bear to say more, afraid of hurting his heart even further. After thinking for a moment, I took off the hair tie from my head and handed it to him, saying, "This is for you. Didn't you always stare at it, saying you wanted to use it to weave grasshoppers?" The hair tie was given to me by my father, back then. When Da Zhuang asked for it, I beat him up several times, but now, that doesn't matter anymore. I went to the outskirts with mother. Mother summoned the big guy and said everything was ready. It was as if a tear had been ripped open in the sky, and I saw a blinding light. Mother held me tight, reaching out toward the direction from which the light surged. In that light, an invisible hand seemed to grow as well. It pulled at mother, pulled at me, pulling us toward that torn opening. I began to see. It seemed, the other world mother had spoken of, but before my mother and I could be swallowed by the light, from not far away in the woods, the heavy, urgent sound of horse hooves suddenly rang out. In almost the blink of an eye, the tall steed was already right before us. My father, dressed in a bright red wedding robe, his eyes wide with fury, dismounted in a flash and rushed toward my mother and me. His eyes were filled with unbearable terror, his voice as if torn apart. "Ah Tang, don't go. Don't go." Mother's face instantly darkened. In the past, her eyes had been full of love for father, and now, it was as if she had encountered the most terrifying of beasts. She frantically pulled me toward the torn opening, her voice trembling with urgency. "System, hurry, close the passage." But just before the blinding light was about to fade away, father had already lunged forward like a madman, gripping one of my wrists with a deathly hold. Mother couldn't bear to let go of me. She had promised to take me with her. The terror in father's eyes gradually shifted into a reckless, unhinged madness. "If you have the heart to, then go ahead and abandon Changle. I'm telling you, I will definitely not treat her well. I will drive her out, leave her to wander the streets, and give all the kindness to Zhao Zhao and Fu Yang'er." I thought, at this moment, father should repent, should apologize. Even so, mother would definitely not soften her heart again. But father probably understood as well. Mother hadn't smiled for many days, nor had she spoken to him for many days. There wasn't a trace of concern left in the way she looked at him. Father knew she no longer loved him, so he used me to threaten mother, trying to force her to stay. Just like that night when he said he would cut off Butcher Wu's hand, mother knelt down and obediently followed him back. I saw father's nearly distorted, determined gaze. He was convinced that I, more than Butcher Wu, would make mother unable to bear leaving. I found him terrifying, and I didn't want mother to stay. I used all my strength to slowly pull my hand out of mother's grasp. Mother looked at me with terror in her eyes. "Changle, don't let go. Mother will take you away. I promised you." That intense light was pulling at her with increasing force, and she was about to lose her grip on me. My strength was small, but gritting my teeth, I slowly pulled my hand free. I was sad and afraid. Unable to imagine life without Mother, but I still mustered a determined gaze and looked at Mother, saying, Changle can't bear to part with Father, nor with Dajwang and Sishi meatballs. Changle doesn't want to go to that unfamiliar place anymore. She wants to stay. Mother, I'm sorry. But Changle doesn't want to leave anymore. I don't want to be a burden to Mother. I don't want Mother to remain trapped in the Prime Minister's mansion, watching Father bring Auntie home with a 10-mile bridal procession. I don't want to see Mother shed tears, pressing the hairpin against her own neck. My mother, who can slaughter pigs and sheep, is the bravest and most formidable person in this world. She shouldn't be trapped. She shouldn't be like that. I had exhausted every last ounce of my strength. Finally, I managed to pull my hand completely free from Mother's grasp. In that blinding light, the dark, gaping hole instantly snatched Mother away. I watched her figure vanish rapidly, accompanied by the sound of her heart-wrenching cry, Changle, Changle. Father suddenly shook me off and lunged toward the cave entrance. But in the blink of an eye, the cave entrance had vanished without a trace. All that remained were the bare trunks of trees in the deep winter forest and the desolate earth. Father, in a frenzied state, drew his long sword and slashed wildly through the air where Mother had vanished, but that gap, as if torn open, could never appear again. All around, only a deathly silence remained. He gasped hoarsely, his throat choked with pain and unwillingness. He suddenly turned around and yanked me up from the ground. His legs gave way, and he knelt down, his large, trembling palms pressed firmly against my shoulders. Have you lost your mind? You're insane. You pushed your mother away. She's your mother, your own mother. How could you let her go? I stared blankly in the direction where Mother had disappeared. After a long, long while, I looked back at Father, whose eyes seemed to want to kill me. I thought he was truly strange. Gazing at the blurry figure before me, I struggled to speak, filled with confusion. Father, it was you who drove Mother away. Father seems to have truly lost his mind. He dragged me back to the Prime Minister's residence and locked me in Mother's bedroom. He never left my side, watching me with an unyielding gaze. He said Mother always loved me the most and would surely come to fetch me soon. As long as he waits by my side, he will surely wait for Mother to return. When the time comes, he will have many words to explain to Mother. Outside, the gongs and drums were clamorous, as the wedding procession brought the new bride home. The wedding attendant urged at the bedroom door, calling Father to go and perform the wedding ceremony. Father did not respond, nor did he rise. His eyes were only bloodshot, fixed on the space around me. It seemed as though Mother would truly emerge at any moment. He said that this time, if Mother were to appear again, she would be willing to stay. He would agree to anything I asked. I asked him, then can Father not marry Auntie, and can he drive Auntie and Fu Yanga away? That night, Mother had said exactly that to Father, telling them to get out. That night, Father did not agree. This time, he remained silent for quite a while again. In the end, he still wore a pained and helpless expression. Changle, it was only after your uncle passed away that your aunt's mind became troubled. Both she and Yanga are truly pitiable, living alone outside. A widow and her orphan child are always bullied. Uncle is Father's younger brother, so Father has to take care of them. So, it just can't be. Then why did he say that no matter what Mother wanted, he would agree to it? I find talking to him really boring, and I'm starting to feel a bit impatient. The house where my aunt lives outside has more than 10 guards alone. Everyone in the capital knows that the house is rented by the Prime Minister, so no one dares to bully her. I can't go out, I can't leave. I simply turned my head to look out the window, ignoring him. I miss Mother dearly, and I don't know if she has safely reached the other world. I hope she is well and never has to return. I quietly clenched my hand, holding back my tears. Father's expression was utterly desolate. He was usually a man of few words, but today he kept chattering in my ear, making my ears ache. Yanga is actually your aunt and uncle's child. Father is lying because he's not feeling well. Look at all those rough men, flirting with your mother. Why can't she be like your aunt? Staying quietly at home, be a proper lady. Wouldn't it be better to learn music, chess, calligraphy, and painting? When I go out to socialize with people, which official doesn't need to save face? I was really getting tired of listening and couldn't help but tilt my head to look at him and ask, did mother suddenly start doing those unseemly jobs with those uncles? When father first came to the capital and took mother to stroll along the long street, wasn't mother a butcher woman? Mother has never changed. She has always been that rough person, slaughtering pigs and sheep, carrying coffins. Father's face froze for a moment, and for a long while, he couldn't speak. After a long time, he finally stammered out, after all, it's different now. I am now the Prime Minister. What high-ranking official has a butcher's wife at home? I truly cannot understand. What does being the Prime Minister matter, just because father became the Prime Minister? Does that mean he is no longer father, and mother is no longer mother? The capital is filled with brocades and silks, fine clothes and luxurious garments, yet mother and I still prefer those simple cotton jackets. Cotton jackets are comfortable to wear, without any constraints. In the jewelry shops of the capital, a single hairpin could fetch 20 taels of silver, yet mother still favored only that white jade hairpin, and I still thought mother looked most beautiful wearing that hairpin. What did it matter if he became Prime Minister, or entered the capital? Once upon a time, our family lived in happiness. Why can't we live like that anymore? Father's face suddenly trembled, a mist gradually rising in the depths of his eyes. That's right. What does it matter even if I become the Prime Minister? My Atang has always been like that, and I never disliked her before. How could I? He was such a smooth talker, but now, with a pained expression. He stammered and couldn't utter a single complete sentence. My mind was only on mother. I no longer wanted to look at him. I turned my gaze back to the window. I wondered if that massive thing that could take people to another world would ever appear again. Probably not. It's okay. It's good that mother has left. Father stayed by my side the whole day. The matchmaker and the maidservants came several times, urging him to go out and perform the wedding ceremony with auntie and entertain the guests. It was also said that even the emperor had sent his personal eunuch to deliver congratulatory gifts. No matter what, father had to go in person to receive them and express his gratitude. But father seemed to have lost his soul, unwilling to leave no matter what was said. The wedding matron urged him again, saying he could even take me along. He still refused. He said there were too many people and chaos outside, and mother would surely take advantage of the confusion to take me away. He said in a daze that if I were taken away, mother would truly never return. It wasn't until the sky turned pitch black and the guests had all left in low spirits. The maid came to deliver the message tactfully. She said the eunuch sent by the emperor was not personally received by father. When he left, he was quite displeased. If father were not the powerful prime minister who now holds sway over the court, the emperor would have long since imposed severe punishment. The maid added, "Auntie is in the bridal chamber, still waiting for father to lift the veil. Her mind is not well, she is crying and making a fuss, demanding to see her husband." Father still did not move, as if he had lost his soul. He stubbornly continued to watch over me. The maidservant had no choice but to come in and light a candle. By the candlelight, I suddenly saw the wound on father's cheek, which mother had scratched with a hairpin many days before. Now the scar still remains, even more prominent than when it was first cut. The Prime Minister's residence has the best golden wound ointment. Even deep bone injuries can heal without leaving a scar. Father has been applying the medicine daily, yet there seems to be no sign of improvement at all. That long scar now seems to have even begun to spread. I found it strange, yet it also felt somewhat familiar. Before father entered the capital, he had a scar on his left cheek. It was from falling down a mountain and getting cut while chopping firewood. Half of his face was nearly destroyed, so terrifying that even children would cry at the sight. Later, when his mother managed to gather enough travel funds for him to go to the capital for the imperial examination, she heard that in the capital, even if one passed the imperial exam to become a jincha and secure a high-ranking official position, one's appearance could not be lacking. She worried that his father's face might hinder his future prospects, so she used a great deal of points to exchange with the big fellow for the restoration of his father's appearance. And now, I look at the long scar on father's face. Suddenly, I feel it doesn't look like it was scratched by mother with a hairpin. Instead, it seems more like the scar that once covered half of father's face is slowly resurfacing. Suddenly, I recall what the big guy said that night. If all the points are cleared, everything the male lead has gained will also be lost. Outside the door, the maid hurried over again, her voice urgent and panicked. She said that the aunt, unable to wait for father to come over, had started crying and making a scene uncontrollably. She also said that father was missing, and she was dragging Fu Yang'er, threatening to crash into the wall to end her life. Father dismissed the maid, saying he would not go over, but after the maid left, he still couldn't sit still. As midnight approached, he suddenly picked me up and hurried out. He was afraid that auntie, in her confused state, might actually take her own life. So he rushed over with me in a hurry. Stepping into the courtyard, I had just reached the doorway, when suddenly, I heard the violent sound of cups and saucers shattering inside. My aunt's voice was filled with uncontrollable rage, completely devoid of her usual foolishness. A bunch of useless fools. Tell him that Yang'er and I are going to die. How could he still not come? I'm telling you all, from now on, I am the one in charge of this Prime Minister's residence. If any of you dare to defy me openly while secretly obeying that vulgar butcher's wife behind my back, I'll have every single one of you thrown out of this residence. Father's hand holding mine suddenly tightened. I saw the veins on his temples bulge, his face a picture of utter shock, as if he had seen a ghost in broad daylight. Yet to me, it felt perfectly ordinary, nothing to be surprised about at all. Mother had said it countless times before. That auntie was just pretending to be crazy. She said that around slaughterhouses and butcher shops, there were always fools trying to beg for a bite of meat. A real fool would never be like auntie. She had said it countless times too when she argued with father, but father never believed it. He said aunt was very pitiful. Aunt had been married to his sickly younger brother for less than 3 months when she lost her husband, and she was already pregnant with a child. They say it was the overwhelming grief that drove my aunt mad. He claimed that my mother, spending her days slaughtering pigs and sheep, had grown cold and callous, incapable of pity, and now, the very aunt he described as pitiful, was just on the other side of the door, arrogantly berating all the servants in the mansion. If it weren't for that fortune teller telling me back then, Fu Rongxue has a lucky star shining by his side, destined for great success in the future, would I have bothered marrying his dying brother just to get close to him? Today, I've done it, and I'm telling you all about it. Whoever among you has the nerve, go ahead and tell Fu Rongxue, but from now on, don't expect to have even a single good day under my watch. Even the usually timid and gentle Fu Yang'er now spoke with an air of command. All of you, behave yourselves. From now on, my mother is in charge of this household. Hurry up and find a way to summon Fu Rongxue. Before her shrill voice could fade away, father's face had already turned terrifyingly dark, and he abruptly kicked the door open. Outside the door and in the courtyard, there were plenty of maids and guards. But no one dared to make a sound, nor would anyone be confused about who the true master of this household was. Auntie, carried away by her own arrogance, thought that someone was keeping watch outside. If father were to come, someone would indeed inform her immediately. The moment the door was kicked open, neither she nor Fu Yang'er had time to hide the ferocity and arrogance on their faces. Aunt was still holding mother's white jade hairpin, about to insert it into her own hair. She always loved to imitate mother's style. Now even a worthless hairpin, she wants to take from mother. But this time, father stepped forward, with eyes blazing crimson. He snatched the hairpin from her hand. Aunt was terrified, her face drained of all color. Stumbling, she fell to the ground. Fu Yang'er, being young, thought things were still as they used to be. With tears streaming down her face, she feigned pitifulness before her father. Father, mother has fallen. Mother has been waiting for you. She hasn't even eaten yet. Father's icy gaze fell upon her. Who is your father? Get out, all of you. His palm trembled as he clenched the white jade hairpin tightly, with force yet utmost care. His eyes were already bloodshot, his voice hoarse and strained as he said, "Drive them out, from now on, whether they live or die. It has nothing to do with the Prime Minister's residence." Aunt and Fu Yanga cried out in fear and anguish as they were dragged up by the guards and thrown out of the mansion. Auntie was still shouting in unwillingness. "We are already married, Fu Rongsha, we are married, I am already the Prime Minister's wife. You cannot drive me away," father sneered. "When did you and I ever bow in marriage?" Auntie suddenly snapped back to reality. Remembering that father had yet to perform the wedding ceremony with her, her face twisted with despair as she was dragged away, laughing hysterically. "What does it matter if you drive me away? What does it matter if you drive me away? I've heard it all. That butcher woman is gone, never to return, Fu Rongsha. It was you who believed everything I said, you who drove her away yourself. Ha ha ha." This time, she seemed to have truly gone mad. Dragged out of the Prime Minister's residence by the guards, she was still screaming shrilly, until the guards raised their hands and knocked her and Fu Yanga unconscious. Then they threw them into the beggar's den outside the city. Father sat on the ground, his face deathly pale, staring blankly at the white jade hairpin in his palm. After a long while, he murmured in a daze, "Yes, yes, it was I who didn't believe you. It was I who drove you away. Ah Tang, I drove them away. I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. Will you come back? Mother is gone. Aunt and Fu Yanga have also been driven away. Father drinks heavily every day, staying shut in his room, staring at me. He began to drift off more and more often, saying my eyes and brows resembled mother's. Gradually, when drunk, he would stare at me blankly and call out, 'Ah Tang, Ah Tang.' I would frown and correct him. 'I am not my mother. I am Changle.' He seemed not to hear my words, his eyes reddening again, brimming with intense sorrow and helplessness. 'I'm sorry. I have failed you. I made so many promises to you. I said I would love and trust you forever. Even Changle knows that even though I've become the Prime Minister, I'm still your father, still your husband. How could I have forgotten? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." As he spoke, tears fell once more under the candlelight. Once, he shed tears by the candlelit table, saying he felt he had let his mother down. I felt sad along with him, and was also somewhat moved. Mother would also embrace him with reddened eyes and say, "Rongsha, everything is fine as it is now, I am very content. But now, I only find his tears truly ugly. He failed my mother, he wronged my mother, and because of him, I no longer have a mother either. What use is it?" No matter how many tears he sheds, I turned my head away, never wanting to look at him again, nor ever wanting to speak to him, in the vast Prime Minister's residence. It was once always bustling with activity, now, only lifeless silence remains. Father has even missed court sessions several times, and the Emperor has begun to harbor growing resentment toward him. The Emperor heard it mentioned again, on the day of my father's grand wedding. The Empress Dowager's personal maid also sent generous gifts. The Emperor was once a puppet ruler in the hands of the Empress Dowager. Now, having finally broken free from her grasp, he began to stand on his own. He was a good emperor, appointing people based on merit and treating others with generosity. Yet, due to his experiences in his youth, he was extremely suspicious. He was particularly wary of the Empress Dowager's faction. The Emperor began to suspect my father, creating a rift between them. The father who was once the most astute, yet he remained absent-minded all day, never clearing his own name, even more so, half a month later in the imperial court. Regarding the invasion by the northern barbarians, he advised His Majesty to send the brave and skilled General Wei to face the enemy. A single sentence, like a lit firebrand tossed into a haystack, it completely ignited the Emperor's suspicion toward him. General Wei is the Empress Dowager's own nephew. After the Emperor took sole control, he has been trying to reduce the military power in his hands. After that, the Emperor never summoned father to the palace again, in the court. He also almost never inquired about father's opinions anymore. Father's real authority and duties were gradually transferred by the Emperor to other officials. I had no interest in these matters. I always miss mother, lying awake through the long nights. In my dreams, I see that massive figure. Mother's face emerges from within it, reaching out to take me home. All the grievances and unease I've carried for days pour out in an instant. Crying until choked with sobs, I reached out to grasp her hand. But suddenly, I jolted awake from the dream. only to see the cold, desolate bedroom and the faint flicker of candlelight. Father was sleeping by my bedside, hearing my cries. He quickly sat up and looked at me. When I saw him, I immediately bit my lip, trembling as I swallowed back the sound of my tears. It felt like I hadn't spoken in many days. Father, his face ashen, asked me, "Changle, what's wrong?" I couldn't utter a single word. He cautiously asked me again, "Did you have a nightmare? Did you dream of Mother?" I stared at him blankly, then shook my head frantically. I mustn't dream of Mother. I mustn't let Mother come back. If Mother came back, she would be locked up by Father, just like Changle. Father reached out his hand, as if wanting to pat my head, terrified. I shrank back to the corner of the bed, trembling as I hugged myself tightly. Father's face trembled, filled with sorrow. "Are you, like your mother, unwilling to speak to me anymore?" Once upon a time, Changle loved to talk the most. I widened my eyes, watching him warily. Father looked at me for a long time, then suddenly raised his hands and covered his face. The scar on half of his face had already grown quite large. That broad palm was almost too large to cover it all. He had returned to the appearance of the father he once was, but he would never again be the person he once was. After a long, long while, he finally released his hand. In the faint candlelight, he looked at me and said, "Changle, your father has made a mistake. I should bear the consequences myself. Right? I taught you that when you were little, Changle." The Emperor began to harbor suspicion toward someone. There were naturally plenty of ways to find fault with him. Just over a month later, I heard people say, Father had gotten into trouble and seemed likely to be thrown into the imperial prison by the Emperor. Perhaps, I will be exiled to a place far, far away. Others also say that it might implicate my family. And I could end up in prison too. Father's face grew increasingly haggard, even his eye sockets began to sink. The scar on half of his face had already become too frightening to look at directly. That afternoon, Father suddenly told me he would take me out to the countryside. I still didn't speak, obediently letting him lift me onto the horse. The further we went, the more familiar the road looked, until he brought me to the place where Mother had disappeared. He set me down and said to me, "Daddy has some business to attend to. Changla, wait here for Daddy." Okay, I only wanted to go find Mother and had no intention of waiting for him, but I could no longer speak. Father crouched down in front of me, reaching out to gently pat my head. Then, one by one, he carefully and meticulously fastened the buttons on my jacket. After a long while, he finally spoke softly again. "It's okay if we don't wait. That light, it comes here every day. Father sees it every time he comes. Mother has been waiting for Changle all along." I was left speechless. Father held me tightly, his tears falling onto my neck. Feeling somewhat scalding, he said, "I'm sorry." He released me, mounted his horse, and rode away. Where Mother had vanished, that light truly began to flicker. Slowly, it stretched into a long line, becoming a tear that split open. I suddenly cried out, "Mother, Mother!" I truly saw my mother again. She reached out to me from that tear, her expression filled with boundless joy. "Changle, come quickly to Mother." But this time, she was sitting in a wheelchair. I didn't have time to ask her. I threw myself into that crack, into my mother's embrace. This time, the light finally carried both my mother and me to another world. In the last flicker of my vision, I saw my father again. He sat on horseback, gazing from afar in the direction of my mother and me, a single tear falling. Then, he was seized by many, many guards. When I looked again, he was already gone from sight. Following Anyang, I fell into a world that seemed like it was from a myth or a fairy tale. I saw candles larger than basins. Mother presses on the wall, and it lights up. The light it emits is as bright as the sun. Mother takes out a small device and presses on it. Later, someone comes knocking at the door, delivering a great many foods, a wide variety. The taste even better than what Butcher Wu makes. I asked Mother, "Mother, are you a fairy from heaven?" Mother hugged me and laughed, laughing so hard she couldn't straighten up. She sat in a wheelchair, unable to stand up anymore. Mother said, before she went to find Father, she was already in a wheelchair. She made a deal with the big guy to redeem Father, in exchange for her own healthy legs, and now, she exchanged the reward for completing the redemption for bringing me here. So, she ended up back in the wheelchair. I felt so guilty that tears fell. Mother held me and said, "It's all right, I've been in a wheelchair for many years now, and I'm long used to it. I was an orphan since childhood, but now that I have Changle, that is the greatest blessing." I leaned against Mother's embrace, still feeling a bit sad. The big fellow came to see Mother a few times. He said Father had been thrown into prison and then exiled to Chenju. Chenju happened to be not far from the small village where Father had once stayed. It was as if Father had truly returned to the way he was before he met Mother, the same disfigurement, the same destitution. The big fellow went on to say that after Aunt and Fu Yanga were driven away by Father, in the beggar's den, they were bullied and even violated. Aunt, in shame and despair, took her own life. And Fu Yanga became a street urchin, losing her sanity. Finally, it sighed and asked Mother, "The male lead truly knows he was wrong. Host, would you consider going back to redeem him one more time?" Mother held me in her arms, sitting on the sofa drinking milk tea and watching TV. During the commercial break, she finally found a moment to glance at the big guy and said, "What did you say?" She used the antiques she brought back to buy a villa and a luxury car. Taking me to eat delicious food every day, she even hired a chef to make 4 happiness meatballs for me. I've only been here for a little over 2 months, and I've already gained nearly 10 pounds. The big guy sighed. "Forget it, I won't send you to suffer that ordeal again." In late spring, Mother took me on a trip to the grasslands. The grasslands were vast, and we were so enchanted that we stayed for half a month. While exploring the area, we met a dark-skinned uncle. He said he herded cattle and sheep on the grasslands, leasing thousands of acres of pasture. Sometimes, he also worked as a butcher, slaughtering cattle and sheep. Mother had been a butcher for many years. We talked with him about the techniques of slaughtering cattle and sheep, and we hit it off right away. He invited us to his tent for a meal. When we arrived, a little boy, 3 or 4 years older than me, came running out of the tent. He was the man's son. And he gave me a grasshopper woven from rope. In the glorious spring light of the grassland, I suddenly noticed the small birthmark behind his ear. Just like Dazhuang's, I suddenly broke into a smile. He followed my lead, chuckling with a simple, honest laugh. The last time I saw Big Guy was on the day of the Minor New Year. That uncle from the grasslands had brought his son to the capital for a visit. Mother invited them over for a meal, preparing braised pork meatballs and a hot pot. We gathered around the window, eating together in a lively and cheerful atmosphere. Amid the steaming mist rising from the hot pot, Uncle stole a glance at Mother, then quickly blushed. The boy sitting beside me kept serving me meatballs, and I ate until I was hiccuping. Outside the window, across the street in the square, electronic fireworks were being set off. The fireworks burst open, filling the air with a festive spirit. Mother and I glanced toward the window, only to see a massive figure hovering in the sky. It said, "Father is dead." A plague struck Chenju. Father, disregarding his own safety, joined other local officials in saving countless victims of the disaster. He then contracted the epidemic disease and passed away within a few days. At the time of his death, still tightly clutching in hand that long-worn white jade hairpin, that hulking figure, only Mother and I could see. I withdrew my gaze, and in the misty haze, met Mother's momentarily reddened eyes. Uncle rose again, pouring a cup of wine for each person. We raise our glasses to celebrate the little new year, wishing for peace and safety year after year. In my daze, it seemed I saw Father again beneath the candlelit desk. I leaned over the desk to keep him company as he studied, wearing thin clothes even in the depths of winter. He pulled me into his arms, his eyes red as he held me tightly and said, "In the days to come, Father will surely give the very best this world has to offer to Changle and your mother." In the blink of an eye, he was gone. Through my reddened vision, I raised my glass and clinked it with the person before me, saying, "May every year and every season bring peace and safety." After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.